from the DEC, Julie, if you'd like to come up. She would like to speak about the issues that are going on with the Issaquah Creek, and I'm gonna give her the floor and let her talk, and yeah, you can do your thing. And then we'll continue with our meeting after you're done. Thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you so much, Supervisor and the town board for having us. My name is Julie Barrett. I'm the regional director for the DEC for this area. I have two of my colleagues here, Tim and TJ, who work with us on the team as well. And we're here to give you a little update on everything that we have been doing and dealing with on Issaquah Creek and Great Lakes Cheese. Answer as many questions as I can. I will give a qualifier. We are in the middle of an active investigation in support of enforcement, and that's going to mean that this is going to be frustrating for both of us to some extent. But let me start at the beginning. We got a call just over 2 weeks ago today. On a Tuesday, we immediately had our law enforcement officers out on site investigating. We had a full court press at the direction of Governor Hochul. We had DEC, Department of Health, dealing with water quality, drinking water issues. We had Ag and Markets looking at what support we could provide to dairy farmers and dairy co-ops and the milk producers. We had folks from Department of Labor thinking about how we can provide wraparound support to any employees who might be affected. And we had Empire State Development as well to the table as well, together with Frank from the governor's office, Puglisi, as well as other governor team. And I was in Buffalo on Tuesday when things happened. I was in Albany for 2 days, and I can assure you that everyone at DEC, I have never seen such a concerted effort by so many people to really bring all the resources necessary to respond to what we were seeing on the ground. We wound up sending crews on almost 20 miles of creek. And to really investigate exactly what the impacts were looking like on fish, on invertebrates, on crayfish, on freshwater mussels, on amphibians, on fish and wildlife, and to really document everything we were seeing and to understand things. We had water quality monitors out doing sampling at 10 locations upstream and downstream of at that point in time, both Franklinville and the Great Lakes Cheese Plant to understand kind of what the issue was. Anytime anyone gave us a tip, we've been giving them to law enforcement to make sure that they're tracking down and investigating anything that we're hearing from community that might help us get a fuller picture of what's going on. And we continue to be there. We have been out at Great Lakes and on Issaquah Creek every day for the last 15 days. And we continue to be there. I don't see us removing our presence for quite some time. We have folks, we brought in certified wastewater treatment operators from our neighbors in Rochester to be on site at Great Lakes Cheese to understand how their operations are and look for opportunities for them to improve their operations to make sure that they are in compliance. And after about 3 days of reconnaissance, as a result of that work with the plant decided to voluntarily, in order to get to compliance, they said that the only way they could do that in the timeline that we needed was to downshift their operations and stop having any effluent. So that Friday, so we started on Tuesday, all of this happened in the middle, and that Friday they shut down the operations of the cheese producing portion of the plant. They still continue to not be operating that production, although they are doing some things to try to see how they're going to be able to ramp up. Our folks are with them every day. We have technical meetings with them every morning. We have technical stuff during the day, in part because we want to make sure that their plan for action is very tight. The commissioner for DEC, as well as the commissioner for the Department of Agriculture, came out on Labor Day and toured the plant, toured the creek, looked at stuff, met with staff, met with the plant, in order to really make sure that they had eyes and understood the issue. Like I said, if any of us thought that the government, is not responsive or being, kind of stuck in these things, I can assure you that that has not been the case here. It's pretty extensive. You've probably seen we've been communicating with local government, state government, federal government, all of the various parties, both your elected officials and agencies that could touch this thing. And we provide regular updates. I know that we've been with all of the local governments working, including departments of health. And hopefully that information is reaching you. There's been a couple of news stories that come up And by and large, we're trying to get the information we can share with people out to you as quickly as possible. We're committed to being as transparent as we can. But when we do, this kind of investigation and enforcement, it's like any time you're trying to figure out a case. And so there is a level of maintaining the privilege and the confidentiality of that process until we have our ducks in a row. The minute we can share stuff with you, we will share stuff with you. So I think I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have tonight. And
how come they were allowed to dump 900,000 gallons a day of the so-called junk way or whatever? That's 100 tankers full. My husband is one of the people that take tankers, loads of the junk way out, and they take it to the farm and put it in the manure pond. Putting it into a freshwater creek, it doesn't seem possible. Doesn't make sense that they're allowed to do that.
So under the Clean Water Act, we have something called the State Permitted Discharge Elimination System, so it's the SPDS permit. And because some people asked us, last night we were at Franklinville, we're happy to come to any of the meetings, I'm happy to do them. So they went through a year-long permitting process with us they came in to start with us, I think, spring 2021. I was not at DEC at the time, and so we've done all of our homework to review the process, but when somebody comes in to do a new facility, they go through a fairly extensive permitting process with us. They meet with us early, we say, these are all the things that you need to do in order to get a permit to operate. A SPDS permit is, which I'm pretty sure should be online, and you can grab it, you probably have seen it, right?
Well,
That's where
I've
you're getting
seen
your
that
numbers
they've
from.
not been in compliance for several months. It wasn't just, just the past 2 weeks. It's been not in compliance for several months.
Right, so let me talk about the permit and then we'll talk about kind of compliance issues. So we formulate the provisions for a SPDS permit, whether or not it's this or any wastewater treatment plant or any other piece, based upon water quality standards that across the state. We base them on the local receiving water, and we base them upon the unique attributes of whatever that facility are. And so any of our provisions were done based upon they calculate what the low flow is on the stream, and we set that limit to be protective. Issuas Creek, the permit here was particularly protective because you have freshwater mussels and hellbenders and all the important things downstream. And so the permit itself is fairly protective. Is it a lot of flow? Yes. But the criteria according to the laws that we are able to use in order to evaluate, was as protective as the agency could make it. We very often, so that's kind of the permit, and there are lots of provisions. It's oxygen levels and various parameters, temperature, etc. When we do plants, almost every wastewater treatment plant, we're monitoring, and so everyone who has a permit has to submit what they call a discharge monitoring report. Sometimes there's some lags in data for a typically operating report. Sometimes the labs come back, if they have a lab right away, but some of the results from those pieces can take about 2 weeks under a typical lab processing thing. So part of the issue here with this plant and this timeline was just partially when their lab results were coming in and when we were getting the information. We have been closely monitoring this plant for compliance with the new permits. We have been on site trying to work with them to get them into compliance because we want to, there's new plants take a little bit of time. It's like when you move into any new facility or new house, right? You're still working through the kinks a little bit. And Great Lakes Cheese didn't actually have all of its equipment up and running until I can't remember, it was sometime late this spring. And so they were, a lot of things were moving all at once. But I want to assure you that DEC is looking at any compliance issues as part of this investigation.
Is it a monthly report or a daily report? Or?
Monthly report.
I would think that you'd want to be seeing that daily.
That there are different criteria depending on facilities. So theirs was a monthly reporting requirement, but they are monitoring things in real time. They have a digester, which is fairly common. Generally, can be a fairly stable piece, but again, it's a little bit like managing. I like to say sourdough starter, right? It's the thing that comes to mind. There are a lot of steps that they need to do within their plant to keep the plant operating well, which is why we sent operators in to make sure, if there was a fast way for them to get kind of course corrected. You know, we wanted them to have expertise to be able to help that, but they've chosen to dial the plant down until they get their system kind of course
Did
corrected.
they know that they had a major issue that for a one day that they maybe could have reported DEC right away to maybe prevent all the way to Olean problems?
So there's two parts there. So in terms of what they know, didn't know, I can't speak to any of those things because it's part of the investigation. As soon as we are able to share what we've learned, it will be shared. And that, you know, that should be sooner rather than later. Shouldn't take, you know, ages to do that, but I want you to know, I'm not trying to be cagey, it's just trying to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row so that we're doing a really good job, quite frankly, on behalf of the New York State taxpayers and the ecosystem. That's who we serve. So, so that piece. In terms of impacts on the creek, so we surveyed upstream and downstream. We saw impacts about, I think at the largest stretch, it was about 8 miles downstream. I mean, these are kind of loose things because the way you go. And our monitoring did not ever show impacts outside of Ishua Creek. So it never made its way down to Olean Creek, at least according to what we've seen in our analysis. We continue to monitor. We monitor every time there's a rain. We monitor all those pieces. We continue to look at the whole stretch because we know we were monitoring to make sure that there was never a threat to the Olean drinking water source, although we did talk to them and we wanted to make sure that their plant was gonna, their monitoring of the water they take out was ready to pivot if they ever did see an impact. But also to be able to understand ecologically what we've seen out in the field and how much of that impact was there. So, and we continue to be out and documenting the damage that was done to the creek.
Could there have been any quicker taking care of things if they had realized, oh, we did a major problem here, let the DEC know right away, or did they just kind of like let it slip? Like, to me, if they're trying to be in compliance or trying to be good to the area, it seems to me if they made a mistake, that they'd admit it right away to try to keep the issue to a minimum.
If it's related to their compliance or what they knew, what they didn't know, I can't talk to it. I just, unfortunately, because and again, I'd love to, but honestly, there are parts of the investigation that are still coming together, and so, again, I want to commit to you, we will share what we know as soon as it becomes ripe and we're able to do that and as transparent as possible as possible. In terms of our response, when we came out for the when we found out 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, as of yesterday, that was the first time we heard from community members that there had actually been issues 2 weeks before that. So nobody called us, and we have got we cover 6 counties and all of the wonderful little fishing access spots in all of our streets.
Who's the original one that contacted you?
The person who called it in.
Like, is it like a plant called in, or is it like a specific person?
You know, I should know that, and I don't know. I'm gonna double check and I'll let you know. I'll find out. We get calls about fish kills at random places and random times all over the place. Sometimes they can be a natural cause, right? We could have the wind shift on Lake Erie and we'll have 1 million dead fish because alewives do not do well in cold water, right? Or we'll have something that's connected with a facility. And so we take all of those things seriously. We go out every time to investigate. We make sure that we look for them in different ways. And this one was particular. The thing that was a flag for us here is the fact that we had such a large mix of species that were impacted. Usually if it's something like a thermal change, it's, you know, all the drum in Lake Erie are just not doing well. Or a large number of drum can't handle that kind of change. Go ahead.
You mentioned in compliance. The plant has been open approximately 1 year. Do you suppose there was a breakdown in rules and regulations on the DEC's part for permitting the operation and in compliance, which I have no clue what in compliance means, other than it's got to be right. Now, they built that plant in the fast lane. And you keep saying we're going to find out if they were in compliance. Why would they not be in compliance before they were in operation? A glitch is a glitch is a glitch. This is a high-tech operation. and probably a lot of computers and lights flashing and everything else. Why would they not have been in compliance and just call this a computer error? So that is leading a lot of people to believe they were never in compliance. They were never really in. They were able to function and operate, because they went from, don't quote me on the numbers, from 2 million gallons, I believe, in Cuba to 4 million gallons here daily. In that area somewhere. So you've doubled the output. And
Sign off on that. Give them the go ahead.
Okay, you heard the results. That was one point I made. It said compliance. That's a very gray area from Albany down.
Do you
Ano-
want
ano-
me to say anything?
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to say anything about?
No, I've just got some comments, and you can
No,
elaborate or
perfectly
whatever. I
fine.
just wanted some comments I
No,
had.
that's okay, and I want you to know, our staff is taking notes on any questions, comments, and
Okay.
issues that are taking place, so that if we need to follow up, we'll follow up. We'll answer the best we can.
Another thing, early on when they started discharging, the DEC guys, I know enough of them that work with their creeks and the fish and the alligators or whatever they work with, they said right along that the salt content discharge was right at the upper limit of being too much. And they were at the upper limits. And that threw a lot of red flags up that who let this slip, this lenient, again, in this fast lane perhaps. I mean, this is just stuff you hear from the people at their ground level. And another comment I have is you mentioned, it's like got all your officials from Albany down, and I'm glad to see the response. It's what we need. But has our county been in contact with you at all, our legislators? They weren't mentioned, so I thought probably they didn't care, and I'm being facetious.
Are you a county
Because they wouldn't
legislator?
have,
We typically tend to go through our elected officials
Oh, sure.
and our local folks. And
Sure.
so, and the county was absolutely involved in a lot of conversations,
Because-
particularly on the drinking water side, but we also were providing regular briefings to
I mean,
them.
this has made the Fox News and everything else, and we have not had a comment once from any of our county officials that I'm aware of, and I may be wrong, have not made a comment from anything.
So I would, I have to say, Cattaraugus County was a good
Not to
partner.
blame you, this is
No.
not you to say, get over here.
You know, if you need to communicate with their county legislators, I would say, that's there. But I will say, the Cattaraugus County government did work closely with, particularly Department of Health on the drinking water questions.
What division would it be, soil and water?
It'd be the Department of Health
Department of Health.
for the water side.
Okay.
So they were, their immediate focus was making sure that there were no drinking water.
And that's out of
gaps.
Machias Station, County Board of Health?
Would be county, I'm not sure which station it was,
I'm
who
sorry.
that person was, but we were speaking directly with the county
Okay.
administrator.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
I
we were
guess that's
talking
it,
with the
Julie,
county
unless something else
administrator.
pops up, thank you,
No, certainly,
thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
always.
Did anything live in that 8 miles downstream after the discharge? Was there any sign of life in the water whatsoever?
We did find some, like, insects and invertebrates. I was there within a week. I had a bullfrog crawling at me, and there was a dramatic impact. So I didn't get to say, when they shut down the plant, so one of the things that we've been monitoring for was dissolved oxygen. When dissolved oxygen goes very, very low, essentially the things that rely upon the oxygen in the water to breathe, you can imagine. So, we had, our testing was showing very, very low dissolved oxygen levels. After the plant stopped operations, we started to see it rebound almost fairly quickly. And at this point in time, dissolved oxygen levels across all of our monitoring stations are above water quality standards, or higher. So, that particular characteristic has jumped back fairly quickly.
But is there an estimate of the damage done while everything was dying though?
So as part of our investigation, we go through a fairly systematic review of all of the impacts to the ecosystem. And we're still in that process.
And then the
Because
only-
it takes a little time, one, to kind of see how things, move and deal with things in the
The
ecosystem.
initial report came out that was an organic waste discharge. And now it's ammonia and chemicals and everything else, which are obviously not organic.
So I think that part of the language there, and I'm not a water quality scientist, I'm not an engineer, But we had some early questions around whether or not there was something more, that you might associate with a more traditional industrial process. And we deal at DEC with some fairly complex chemicals, and so we wanted people to know that the kinds of waste that were associated with this were things that you would see from, you know, kind of that cheese making process. There wasn't, you know, a heavy metal, there wasn't PCBs, there weren't some of the other kinds of constituents that, that might make people afraid for, kind of the contamination question. And that's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing, you know, those things that are associated with the breakdown of the cleaning water, at the plant and the wastewater treatment process.
Does the banks of the creek with all the dead fish and critters, is that gonna be cleaned up, or is it just gonna be left there for the other animals to eat and die from on top of it?
So we collected a fair number of fish as part of our investigation, sent them to a lab, they're being analyzed right now, we sent a lot of fish, so it's taking a little bit of time. And again, as we get results and as things get connected with the investigation, we'll be able to share what information is coming out, but anything that could be part of that investigation and or enforcement is currently kind of in that bubble. As soon as we can, we'll share it.
That was the
publicly.
biggest question we had, because
Yeah.
if fish rot, they start to stink, and the people near the banks don't like that.
Yeah,
That's one of the
nobody,
questions.
it's pretty stinky. Part of the reason why we put out the recreation advisory, it's not a great time to be out on the creek, you know, there are fish that are breaking down. Mother Nature is one of the best, you know, kind of, our ecosystems, have a wonderful way of taking things and breaking them down and recycling them, but it's stinky right now. It's not great, and it's not, and it's heartbreaking. I think, you know, we didn't take a moment to recognize, but the number of people who've approached us, come up to the truck, come out to staff, talk to us about fishing in this creek since they were small, about the deep love and care that they have for this place and this community, and just how heartbreaking it's been. I have to tell you, our team was in this creek in July doing a biological survey. They know it well. We have biologists on staff. In fact, I asked TJ to bring a couple copies. One of our biologists is an expert in hellbenders. We have other biologists in the region that are experts in freshwater mussels. This is what they've dedicated big parts of their career to. This is heartbreaking for us too, to see this kind of damage. Certainly our whole fisheries team, they fish these waters, they stock these creeks. This is a hard one to navigate, because it's just a level of damage that is heartbreaking. I say that because I want you to know that we care, and we're taking it really, really seriously, and we're backing that up with the muscle of DEC's scientists and and all the people, our permit writers, our leofos, in order to make sure that the responsible parties are held accountable, and that measures are taken so that it doesn't ever happen again.
Are you testing for any disease, like, I understand perhaps botulism? Are you testing for any of that? Because I understand correct me if I'm wrong, there's two types. One is more aquatic and one is, like we all hear about. Now, there's a couple different, are they testing for that?
I can ask.
Maybe you can't, I don't know, I'm just
I
curious.
have to ask the fisheries biologist if that's part of the pathology panel that they're
Yeah,
doing.
because this is
but-
where it really come from, the fishery type people that I know
Yeah.
were concerned about it. So
Yeah.
just because I'm
The
curious.
difference is that sometimes we have damage to fish and wildlife, and the botulism is the origin of the issue. That is not what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think if
Okay,
yeah.
okay, understand,
So this
okay,
was definitely a water quality,
okay, it wasn't
like
something that
challenge
could
that
have,
was-
okay,
Yes. So sometimes we're at a case where, there were, a couple of years ago, there were fairly frequent botulism outbreaks. That's a different kind of.
well, in case you hear that, because people are saying it, and now that could, make people very, very concerned, worried, and maybe overreact.
Yeah, no, and I think, there are bacteria forms, and, I'm not a biologist, so part of the reason why we say.
And I didn't mean to put you
until-
in that corner, but just
No, it's
that,
okay. I mean, it's part of my job is to listen to your questions and to try to get you good answers from the scientists and the people who study this stuff and who are dedicated, in their positions and careers for it. For, one of the reasons why we're encouraging people to just stay, not, be out fishing and in contact with the creeks, just as those fish break down, you know, there are bacteria associated with that process. We just want to make sure everybody's, you know, good. If for some reason anybody sees something, any problematic wildlife, or of stuff of concern, they are welcome to call us. Including the fact that if anybody hears, you know, like we've had folks who feel like they may know more about what's happening at, you know, and possible sources of the problem, please call, you know, let us know. We can give you our legal team, our law enforcement officers' numbers. And, you know, and we'll investigate the leads, because we want to make sure we have a full picture so that we're doing as effective a job at preventing it and holding people accountable.
I understand you're checking for bald eagles down through there too.
We did have, apparently.
Because that's federal. Now you got a different situation.
Yeah, well, and we work closely with, you know, our federal partners. We did have somebody who reported that there's been a pair of eagles on the creek, and that one has not been around, in the last couple of weeks. We have not been able to find a bird. So if anybody finds the bird, please tell us, because then we can run pathology. Without that, any number of things can happen. And
Well,
I
that's
do-
a concern that
Yeah.
the eagle may have got into a fish or something, whatever.
Sure, and similarly, you know, people have asked about whether or not wildlife has been impacted and things in the food chain. We have surveyed a very, very long stretch of creek, and anyone who's gone anywhere on the creek, if you go 20 miles on any creek, you may find, you know,
Oh, sure.
a dead animal. The piece, we are taking everything we find seriously, and we're investigating to see if there's a connection. We're not dismissing if we find something, but we can't assume that there's a connection, because it's really not.
You get in trouble when you assume.
My mom taught me that one. We all know the rules, so we don't have to say it out loud,
Remember
but
that.
like, yes, it just went through my head because my mom taught me well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you know if the DEC is going to change the regulations and not allow the 900,000 gallons a day?
I think they have to be in compliance if they're gonna operate. Now, if there is reason, I have not seen anybody yet ask about whether or not those provisions are accurate or, you know, appropriate, but we wrote protective provisions. If they have complied, then we should not be having these problems.
And do you have any idea when it might be healthy enough to restock? It might be next spring maybe, or?
So, we are our biologists are monitoring that one fairly closely. And when we can, they'll be restocking. There's been some conversation. So right now we're in full reconnaissance, full investigation, trying to make sure that we really understand where it came from, the extent of the problem, so that we can, you know, so to stop it and then, get accountability and then, and have restoration. So that's a very, very extensive process. I wish I could say this has never happened ever before in the United States, but unfortunately we have been through environmental damage situations, and so there's a bit of a system and a protocol for doing that. We're making sure that we do our job really, really well right now, so that we can hold people accountable. Then there's the process of recovery. And everything that lives in that creek system has a slightly different life cycle, and they have different relationships. And so some things like dissolved oxygen bounce back right away. We're not gonna have, you know, a fairly large walleye in that creek for a number of years. We lost some really wonderful old fish that had been there for a long time, and we don't stock that. And that's gonna take, so I wanna manage expectations. It could be a long time till you see the creek that you had before.
Are they gonna do the cost of everything? Are they gonna be doing the cost of everything if it's them?
So the thing I can say is that the responsible parties will be held accountable.
And they should be paying every penny for the DEC people that my nickel pays for, like you folks are spending there every day. It should be their responsibility to pay the tab. It's their fault, and you people are not doing what you'd like to be doing. You're having to do this on our nickel,
And
not
they're
theirs.
free, huh?
Not yet. Paying for my kid to go to school.
That won't happen, but
Is the DEC gonna place somebody down there every day now and make them hire them, and so this can be monitored the right way, or is it
So,
gonna be, let's buy another permit and we'll be okay?
so, We have somebody on site there
Yeah, but
now.
you're gonna have them all the time from now on.
So I think that we will have somebody, anytime somebody has a speedies permit, and I wish I knew, but I don't know the exact number of permits that we have in even our region, much less across the state of New York. But it's like we're with them for the duration of their operations. We're monitoring their discharge reports that they come in, we do regular inspections. That's part of our responsibility is implementing on the Clean Water Act side of things.
So the DEC gave them a speedy permit, and word has it that this has been going on for a few months now?
So, what happened in August was really different from what we were seeing before that. So I can't say too much about kind of the differences, but what we saw in August was really dramatically different. So, I can't expound much more, but I want you to know, we've been actively monitoring this plant for the time it's been open.
I live across from the plant. My water has not been compromised, which is great. It's been tested many times. However, the smell has been horrendous. I can't open my windows. I can't run my air conditioner. Horrendous.
So we do have, they have both their water and their air permit. We always invite people to let us know if they're having any issues. One of the things I don't know, depending on the timing of when when the smells are, and if it's been like since they opened or just since August, we can always, when we have other problematic facilities, we give people essentially a form to fill out that says, this is when it's happening, this is what I was smelling, and what we do then is we go back and investigate exactly what they were doing and what their reports say and what their facility monitors were saying for that time, to check and see if that's, if they line up, because then it tells us, is this a plant issue or is it something else? That's pretty standard for us on the air quality monitoring side. If you've ever seen us in the press for dealing with high quality, or high profile air quality issues, we don't tend to have as many down this way. That's part of our protocol, making sure that, if the community is having an impact, smelling something, having problems, that we're getting those complaints in and that we're documenting them because we use them as part of our investigation.
Well, the smell has been going on since mid-June.
Okay.
I don't smell it now because they're shut down.
Like everybody's aware of all the fish kill and everything downstream from the discharge, but what about the plant life in the creek? Is that pretty much all dead as well?
We are investigating all aspects of the health of the creek, and that's part of the analysis. I think that impacts the wildlife, or I should say to fish, and some of the smaller stuff was just more evident at first, but plant life for us covers a really big spectrum of plants, and so I think I can't speak to, that, and the reaction times are different, which is why we're gonna be monitoring and kind of keeping an eye on the creek for a while, to make sure we fully document the damage. Because obviously, it's not just it's water quality, it's habitat, and how that was in addition to the creatures that rely upon the creek for their lives.
What are they doing with the water now? The one that they're running, like, are they storing it, sending it out to get treated? What are they doing with that?
They haven't been running. The only thing that they've been doing right now on site was they had some cheese that they had made and they were cutting it and packaging it. That was kind of how they were able to bring some workers back for a bit, to the best of my knowledge. As they ramp up, they have created some additional capacity on site to be able to hold wastewater. They also have the ability to move discharge off as it gets going. There is a certain portion that can go for application on farm fields as part of our CAFO and nutrient management program, but that's got a whole nother kind of regulation process with it.
So what, they dump it in the fields now?
No. There's no dumping. So we have a nutrient management plan for their discharge.
Just a suggestion, also keep in touch with the local fire department, Farmersville, so they've had many calls at the plant since they've opened, and, you know, it could be a leaky valve, it could be anything that could help you understand what might be going on in the plant as well. Because they've had, I think, considered a nuisance because it had a lot of calls for their cheese plant. And it's-
Can you say more, because I'm not sure if I'm following you, so the fire department has been getting calls that they're having leaky valves?
The alarm will go off for a leaking valve or whatever, but I, you know, talked to the chief and he said that there's been many, many calls and it's been a nuisance. In fact, they were contacting the state to see about, you know, when it becomes a nuisance, you know, what can they do about it, because they've had many calls, many more calls than they've ever had for any calls all year, you know, from the beginning of the year. So you might wanna get in touch with them and see what kind of calls, because they have it very well documented as to what their calls were, so just something to.
That's a great suggestion. If anyone else has any other suggestions for us to better understand pieces, like we have as much information as possible helps us do a better job.
How about the big game is coming, big game season is coming, and, how about the deer that have drank that water? Are they okay to eat? Is that venison gonna be compromised?
We are in the middle of our investigation, and I think that you know, one of the questions that's being analyzed right now is if deer aren't eating the fish, and so is there a
They do
pathway,
drink the
they
water.
drink the water, right? So, I think that that's, and there are other animals that could be eating fish, right? So I think that there are a range of questions that are currently under investigation. But our full biology team is on that. We've heard that question from a number of people, and I'll
This
make
could
sure.
be years then, before we have any final answers, per se.
I think that there's a commitment to try to move things along from our side as fast as possible.
But-
It's gonna take years for the creek to recover, but you're gonna see some fast action on behalf